Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me? I got a nod, that's a good start. Okay, so we're gonna start, obviously, as you can see in the chat, we'll start the questions in the chat room. I'm gonna call on people in the order that they ask the questions in the chat room. At that point, you will ask your question directly of the commissioner. Make sure that unless you're asking a question, that you stay muted and at all times so that we don't have that background noise. And away we go. So the very first question is for Eric Sana, the Los Angeles Times.
I have a question about the ground rules and clarifying how the playoffs are gonna take place, because obviously there's some rules in there about requiring a 500 or better record, for example, in baseball. Also, schools have interpreted the state rules differently. Some are testing, some aren't. Some are quarantining kids after they go out of state for club competitions. Can you clarify those two issues?
Well, I'll first say welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And to your questions, Eric, first, in terms of qualifications, the qualifications for our playoffs and the sports that we're planning on are going to remain the same. And if you're specifically referring to at-large, then at-large teams do have to have a record of 500 or better to be considered for an at-large playoff berth. In terms of public health guidelines, local county health organization guidelines, those are going to rule the day. So there aren't CIF-SOUTHERN section guidelines specific to some of the issues that you raise. It will be up to our individual schools, school districts, private schools to be working with their local county, along with the California Department of Public Health guidelines to deal with issues as they arise, such as a positive test or what quarantine issues may be necessary.
All right, I don't see any questions in the chat. So Fred, I see your hand up. Fred Robledo, Southern California News Group.
Hi, Rob. My question is, have you decided whether there will be CIF championship locations, for basketball? Baseball, you traditionally done, softball, you traditionally done. Where are we at with that right now?
Well, Fred, it's a kind of a work in progress. I mean, today's announcement was to try to make sure everybody was aware of the sports that we believe we can go forward with, especially the team sports as we described it. Right now, we're planning for home sites, and I think people understand that that's what is allowable now under California Department of Public Health guidelines. So for the sports that we listed, we are looking at home sites primarily, potentially on things breaking later. There could be a change to that, but I think people should be prepared for home sites for the sports that we listed in our announcement today.
Even for basketball and baseball and softball, just like you were doing football, home sites for championships, is that what you're saying?
At this time, yes, because those are not activities that are cleared by California Department of Public Health guidelines. You're not allowed to host a single site, multiple game, multiple school event. So I know, for example, some of our basketball programs are hoping to hold some showcase events. Those are not currently allowed to happen. So certainly if you can't hold a showcase event right now, you certainly couldn't hold a CIF-SOUTHERN section championship event involving multiple schools all going to the same venue. So for now, we really have to look at home sites as the avenue for delivering championship events and all up until including finals.
Yeah, and one real quick follow-up to Eric's questions in terms of qualification with that large teams. How difficult of a challenge is that going to be? You have some teams, I think Damien in basketball, for example, is trying to play a 28-game schedule. You may have some teams just playing a 10-game league schedule, and you might have a lot of leagues with team opt-outs that might turn 5-team leagues into 3-team leagues. Does that change their qualification in terms of how many teams you can qualify out of that league? I mean, are all those going to be things you've got to deal with?
Well, sure, but and everyone needs to remember, you qualify from leagues initially. So we'll certainly be, and that's why about 2 weeks ago, we did a survey of our leagues and asked them all to respond to us and let us know how many schools that they planned on having in their league and participating in their league in the certain sports so that we could do a tracking of their qualifiers and how they're going to arrive at determining their playoff entries. So we'll be doing that. And what you referred to with the 500 or better just relates to at-large teams that do not qualify automatically from their leagues. So we'll be looking at that going forward as well. So it's a little different dynamic. I think we all have to realize that. We believe, we hope, maybe we expect that with the announcement of having championships, that may be something that does move forward league play, that leagues will be more likely to get their games included this year. And in doing so, then they arrive at their league qualifiers and send them on to our section championships. So all that will start to play itself out here over these next few weeks, a couple of months, and we'll see how it all plays out.
Okay, thank you. Can I have one more question, or you need to move on?
That's fine, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I promised the wrestling coach I would ask this route. Was there some consideration to having the individual wrestling championships outdoors? We've seen some schools do that on football fields. They bring the mats out. I think the individual wrestlers feel like, you know, they're the one sport individually that has already been determined that they will not have championships.
Well, we wanted to
been an option, and if not, explain why.
Well, the reference you make to wrestling happening outside, everyone needs to be reminded that those are dual meets only. The only wrestling competition right now that's allowed has been dual meet, whether it's outdoor or even if it can be done indoor, following the guidelines of California Department of Public Health and local health authorities. So there are no wrestling tournaments for individual wrestling. There haven't been, and there really didn't seem to be in working with the CIF state office and also with California Department of Public Health, a realistic viewpoint going forward that there ever would be an individual wrestling tournament allowed, or if it was allowed, not in time for us to conduct an individual wrestling championship for boys and for girls. Our girls and boys wrestling programs won't even have league finals approved at this point. So there have been no wrestling tournaments, unfortunately, for individual wrestling. There doesn't seem to be a landscape going forward that was going to happen. And so having to announce that was not possible was not an easy decision. But there was also an idea that how long could we let that hang out there with a realistic chance that it wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't fair to continue to let people believe that might be possible. It was pretty well determined as a high contact indoor sport, the mechanism for us to be able to conduct section championships for individual boys and individual girls wrestling, it just wasn't going to happen.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dan Albano, Orange County Register.
Hey, Rob, I know the news is, fresh today. It's only been a few hours, but can you give us an update on how the section is doing, kind of talking to the health departments about, those championships, those individual championships in those sports that have the exemptions, like where you guys, if you have any updates to share, like on swimming, track, tennis and golf, and maybe there's been some talk about venues, because I heard that the Riverside venue for swimming was going to be changing. I was wondering if you could give some updates on that.
Well, I can tell you that when we received the news Tuesday night that there was a possibility that the travel limitations were lifted, that the ability for us to conduct section championships was going to be possible, and we got to work immediately. So for the rest of last week and up to today, we've already been in contact with various sites that we are trying to line up for track and field, for swimming, for golf, for individual tennis, already working with trying to line some sites up, already working with some county health departments. We've already received an approval for one of our track events. So that will be ongoing. And obviously, as I mentioned in today's statement, we're going to do the very best we can to get the information out as soon as we can get it. We want people to know that those team sports that we talked about, and we're pretty confident those are going to go forward right now, and people need to be prepared for that. And then we'll do the very best we can to lock down these individual championship sites, the different sports that we outlined for you today. And I can just tell you that almost from the moment we got the word at the end of Tuesday night last week, that's been an ongoing process. Our staff is working very hard. Our assistant commissioners are, as we speak, lining things up and trying to get approvals and trying to get certain sites and so forth set up for us. We do not have Riverside Community College for swimming. That was already told to us a while ago. That isn't going to change. So for the sport of swimming and diving, we are actively looking to find a new home for those disciplines, and hopefully we'll have that lined up soon enough to give everyone the word, and people can start planning for those particular championships as well.
And a follow-up, Rob, is that And are all the divisions going to be the same as far as, across the board for all these season 2 sports? That doesn't change that, for, like, for example, track and swimming, there's still the same amount of divisions and kind of things like that?
That's correct. We're going to have the same number of divisions. We're going to have the same playoff groupings. We didn't have full seasons in our spring sports last year, as everyone knows. We didn't apply the 2020 results because they were so sporadic and it was very incomplete for us to do that. So we have kept the same playoff divisions intact that we had for 2020 for spring sports. And of course, our basketball, our soccer, those were sports that did complete their seasons last year. So those divisions remain the same. Same number of divisions, same number of champions, same things that we've talked about really since July of 2020 when we announced this calendar in the first place. We're trying to keep things as much as we are used to doing and as much as we have done in the past, but hopefully with an understanding that there needs to be some adaptation. There will be some changes. There will be some things that aren't exactly as they've always been, but the alternative was that we had nothing. And no one wanted that. So we're excited that we can provide the championships coming forward, and we're going to do everything we can to come through and deliver for the student athletes as we promised them that we would do last July. We told them we would do this. If given the chance, we would do it. We finally got our chance, and we're ready to go forward.
Connor Morissette, Scorebook Live.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for doing this. On the website, using basketball as an example, there are the first contest date, sit-out period date, and then the playoff dates. Are those playoff dates for those team sports that are on the website accurate? Are those going to change, or are those the dates as of right now?
They're accurate, but we are, as I mentioned in today's announcement, you need to look for more specifics when the playoff bulletins come out for each sport. So that's one thing that's happening always right now too, is that the playoff bulletins for basketball, for lacrosse, for baseball, softball, etc., soccer, those are all being developed, and they'll have many more specific details about each of those sports, and those will be coming very, very soon. So you'll see exact dates. We are aware, and I think everyone knows that with this different calendar and backing up into June like we are in many of our sports, there are going to be graduations. There are going to be different ceremonies and things happening with the end of school. There are going to be lots of different things that may be coming forward that aren't normally part of a playoff time frame when it comes to CIF Southern section. So with that in mind, we're going to work with our member schools. They're going to work together. An absolute date for every single game may not be the same. There may be a basketball game moved because it's graduation day. There may be a baseball, softball game moved for some other kind of thing that a particular school or schools have going on. So everyone has to understand as we go deeper into May and into June that those are not traditionally dates that we're playing Southern Section Championship events, but they are dates that we hope there'll be flexibility. We'll be able to work through it with the different schools. It's one of the advantages to having home sites for so many of the championship events, because when you're not locked down to a particular venue that must be utilized on certain dates and times, but you have the ability to work with member schools involved in those actual games to make the date and time work the best it can for the two schools involved, then that's some of the things that you'll be seeing going forward.
Great. And then one other thing, is there a drop date? Like tomorrow was the drop date for the announcement that came today. Is there a drop date for like a swimming and diving competition? If you can't have a championship, if it's not agreed to with a local health authority, will there be a drop date of blank as to when you'll make a decision or not?
Well, there really won't be a drop dead date. I think there's a process, and it's a step-by-step process. First, we have to locate venues and be able to manage the events at the venues that were selected. Once that's done, we have to start pursuing the approvals from local county health departments to actually hold the events there. And I hope everyone realizes that it's not only the county where you host the event. You have to get approval from the counties that those who will travel to that event. And so that's another part of this process to finally get these venues locked down and to get the actual championships to happen. So I think we'd like to keep it alive as long as we can. We won't be moving it further backward. We're going to stick to the dates that we've had since July. And the only question will be how close we get to where there would have to be a decision made. I'm not going to commit to that today because we could get to the next couple of weeks and be able to line everything up, or maybe there's one or two health departments that we're waiting on and we might have to wait an additional week. Well, then we'll certainly keep that open as long as we can. But for a sport like swimming or a sport like track and field or individual tennis or golf, the leagues will need time to have league finals. And as we start to approach maybe 2 weeks before or a week before the actual championship events are scheduled, then obviously if we're not seeing that approvals are being given and leagues aren't allowed to have league finals, and therefore we would not have the ability to do section championships. But all that remains to be seen. Today's April 12th. I would tell you, I don't think anything within the next month would dissuade us from our job. We're going to try as hard as we can here to get all this lined up. So I wouldn't be looking for any drop dead or cancellation issues, at least a month.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
James Escobar-Sega, Southern California News Group.
Hey, Rob, thanks for taking my question. I have three just small questions. First off, who will be allowed to attend a sectional playoff game? Will there be medical protocols in place for those who plan on attending? And will you be charging any admissions fees for those playoff games or for the championships? And I have a follow-up to that. Thank you.
Well, the medical protocols and the health guidelines are right there in what we had published and linked up last week when we got the statement from the state office. So we're going to follow the California Department of Public Health and local county health organization guidelines. Our schools are doing that now. They are hosting games outdoors and indoors following those guidelines, and those will continue because, as I mentioned, most of these games are all going to be played at host sites, school sites, and they can continue to use those same protocols that they're using now. Our schools are charging admission, and so will we. It will be limited capacity depending on what the local county or the California Department of Public Health are saying at that time. But remember, today is April 12th. Our championships don't start really until the end of May and into June. A lot can happen. A lot can change. Some of those capacity limits may be lifted in terms of percentages, and a higher number of folks will be allowed to come in and watch. So we'll be conducting these championships as best we can, as we always have done, with, as I said, maybe the exception that many of them will be played at host or home sites versus having a centralized venue.
And then if I have a follow-up, Rob, I know that during the executive council meeting, it was announced that the Southern Section did receive another payment from the Small Business Protection Program. Can you give us an update on that?
Yes, I can. We were approved for that. It was something that we obviously wanted to get and have in place in the event that we were going to get the opportunity to conduct section championships. That will obviously allow us to bring our staff back. We're very excited to do that. We hope and expect that our staff that we unfortunately furloughed will be back in place here next Monday, April 19. So we need our whole team together. We need our family back together so that we can get all of this work done that's ahead of us. But certainly having the support of the payroll protection plan allows that opportunity. As I said to everyone, the financial considerations are important, but they're not going to take precedence over having championships, providing these opportunities for our student athletes in our programs to achieve their goals. So whatever the financial fallout may be, or the issues of not being able to have full capacity, or other things that may limit our ability to obtain championship revenue, we're still going to go forward with the best efforts that we can make, and we're going to provide these championship opportunities. And certainly that's what we're looking forward to doing and expecting here in the next couple of months.
Thank you, sir.
Frank Burleson. Frank, you're muted. You muted yourself again. There you go.
Yeah. Now?
Good.
Yeah, great. I think you may have already answered the question in a roundabout way, Rob, but I know tentatively, at least, the first date for basketball playoffs, I think, is May 25th, that Tuesday. Tentatively, when would they end, and what would be the sequence of rounds?
Well, Frank, they're going to be the same. I mean, we're going to have the same number of divisions, as I mentioned. There may be a variety of bracket sizes. That will remain to be seen based on what leagues are doing and how many of them will have full complement of league entries and so forth. But we will have maybe a variety of sizes in our bracketing. But in terms of the dates and number of games being played for each round of the championships that we have planned, we expect to be able to do that. As I mentioned, when you're using home sites, especially for championship finals, you may see some flexibility. For example, we have a full week between our semifinals and our finals. Typically, we do that, especially when we're using centralized venues with all that's necessary to be done there. We may see where schools, if they agree, move a championship final to earlier in the week than to go all the way to the next Friday or Saturday. So we may see things like that. As I mentioned in our statement today, people need to understand that this is a flexible and changing situation. We want to provide as much stability as we can. We've had these dates out for months, since last July. We expect to stick to them, but don't be surprised to see individual changes or groups of changes that may happen based on the schools involved and the circumstances that relate to their campuses and their communities as they try to navigate through this as well. So that's what we have planned, and that's what we look forward to.
And one more thing, Tom and Rob, I guess probably examples would be baseball and track and fields in years past into June, but now especially basketball, there could be a case where a lot of the student athletes competing for championships have already graduated the week before or even a couple of weeks before. Is that correct?
Right. And that's going to be acceptable under our bylaws, as you can finish the season after graduation in the spring. We have a specific bylaw that does not allow that for mid-year graduation, but certainly for students who will be graduating in May and may have 2 or 3 weeks ahead of them of Southern Section Championship competition. Obviously, those students can continue to participate and be part of that as they go forward into their championship experience.
Great. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Tyler Hendrickson, the 562.
Thanks, Tom. Just wanted to start and thank Rob and CIF Southern Section staff for meeting your deadlines. As always, you know how much that means to me, so thank you. Connor swooped my original question, but I'll ask a different one. With the meet and individual sports still tentative based on CDPH guidelines, should there be maybe a county or a couple counties that say that those events wouldn't be viable or wouldn't be allowed? Would it be possible, how much flexibility is there to kind of restructure those meets to only include maybe 6 or 7 of the counties, for instance, at a centralized swimming or track meet? Is there flexibility if not all of the health departments give approval to modify that as far as which schools are able to compete?
That's a really good question, Tyler. And I guess the way I've looked at this now, and again, we're still dealing in changes that have been made very rapidly and as they've happened, but I would like to believe that if we have county approval to hold an event which would involve student athletes from all 8 of our counties, if the county where the event is being held will approve that to happen and allow the travel to that event in that county, I would find it really hard to believe that the counties where the students would be traveling from would say no. And that's what I'd like to hope and hold on to. And as I said, we've already started to hear from some of these counties, and there seems to be a lot of cooperation among them. So as I mentioned, it's a step-by-step and a phase-in process. We have to identify the venue. We have to be able to make sure it can be run at that venue. Then we have to go to the local health department where the venue is located and get the approval from them. And once we can get that, we can go to the adjoining counties and the other counties within our Southern Section footprint. But as I mentioned, I have to believe if we can get the local approval first, and they're willing to accept the student athletes from the 8 counties that we have, why wouldn't the other 8 counties be willing to allow their student athletes to travel to that particular event? So that's our hope. As I mentioned, it's not just a swimming or a track, it's an individual tennis, it's a golf. All of those sports are involved. And as I mentioned, we've already been in contact with health departments. We've actually seen some approvals already. And we just would like to keep pursuing that effort and make sure that we can get these finalized and get the word out so everybody can be ready to go. But it is going to take us a little bit of time. I mean, just for example, in the sport of golf, we have 18 golf courses that need to be secured to run our boys and girls golf championships. So that doesn't happen in 2 or 3 days. And we're working on it, and we hope to get it done. And that's just one example. We know what we have in swimming. We know what we have in track. We know what we have in individual tennis. And again, my apologies to boys and girls individual wrestling. I really wish we could do that. But that particular sport is different issues than the others that I've mentioned. So we're just going to have to ask for people's patience and understanding, but knowing what the big picture is and knowing what's at the end of the rainbow, hopefully, we have our eyes on the prize and what we want to try to do. So give us the chance to do it. I assure you and promise you we're giving every effort we can give so that we can make this happen.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. You mentioned that you've been in contact and have received some approvals already. Are you able to share which health departments or counties you have already gotten the green light from?
I prefer not to, because I'd like to. I don't like to deal with some of the incomplete information. I think we have that responsibility to give everybody complete information. If I was to share with you, let's say, a couple of counties that may have already come on board, but we still don't have other counties that have, then what would be the purpose of even sharing that with you? So I'd much rather be able to give you complete and full information when the time comes, and everyone can then prepare accordingly. And I appreciate the question, and I have no problem with it. I just, as I mentioned, I'd rather deal with realities and what we've got, and that'll be coming. As I said, I hope that we'll have that for you, and it won't be too long before we do. But again, it's not up to us. It's up to others that make these decisions. Hopefully people have understood that for a long time, although we've shared some of the frustrations of those who don't understand how this works. Once we get the sign off we need, then, like I said, you'll be the first to know, along with our member schools, and we'll get this thing done.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Tim Burke, OC Sports Zone. Tim.
Hi, Rob and Tobin. How would you assess the spring football season so far?
Well, what I've really enjoyed watching, after I've been out to some games myself, but many of you on this call have written the articles about the games, and what I've just enjoyed reading is the quotes from the student athletes about how happy they are to be back, how happy they are to be with their teammates, how much it means to them to be able to have the opportunity to be out there competing again. So our coaches, our student athletes, they've just been tremendous. Our athletic directors, they've done such a fantastic job of dealing with all these changes and all the things that have come their way, but always keeping in mind who it was for, and it's the student athletes. And so for me, I think it's gone very well. Have there been some hiccups? Of course there are, and we said that there would be. Unfortunately, some of our programs either couldn't get started, or if they did get started, they had some stumbles along the way with maybe a positive test of an opponent or something that maybe canceled a game or two, and we feel bad for that. But I think for the most part, what I've read and what I've seen have just been a very positive reaction. Certainly everyone had to wait a really long time for us to get back on the football field and the other sports that we've had. But, it's really been gratifying to read the comments and quotes and see what has been said about this, because it's certainly been a pretty positive experience for those who have been able to be part of it.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Mike G for the 562.
Hey, Rob, Tom, thanks for holding the press conference. I have a question. I know we're all going to deal with the sort of insanity of the crunch here over the next 2 months. But looking ahead a little bit, the governor has announced that June 15th, they're planning on doing away with the tier system and moving on to whatever comes after that. Is it the expectation of the CIF-SOUTHERN section that as of June 16th, we're going to basically be starting a regular 21-22 school year, at least in terms of what sports are played and the schedule?
Well, if there's anything that's been learned here in this season 2, and even with the season 1 sports that got started, is we've learned a ton of things. And I would hope and expect that once we are finished with our season 2, with our championships in June, that we are on full speed ahead to go forward for a 2021-2022 school year, as we're used to seeing. So we did waive the summer dead period. We did so because we knew that with our championships going as late into June as they were, our schools needed maximum flexibility to be able to prepare between the end of this particular school year and the start of next year. But I would certainly like to believe that these are great examples of proving to anyone in the decision-making process at the state or local level that our school educators, our professional educators can run our athletic programs in a healthy and safe way. And if we're able to do that and continue to do that in April, May, and June, then I have every expectation that we prepare to go forward in the fall of 2021, specifically in August when the sports calendar will begin, and we'll be ready to roll for the 2021-2022 school year.
Eric Sonheimer, the LA Times. You're muted, Eric.
quick question regarding state and regionals. They're supposed to decide end of the month or early next month. Rob, what would be your recommendation to the state regarding that? Should they go forward? If not, it would give the sections more flexibility in case things don't go as expected.
Well, that's not a bad question. I think what the state has to wrestle with and grapple with is the idea that how many sections are actually going to have section championships. So for them to conduct state championships and have them be viable, how many sections are going to participate? We're certainly prepared to be one of them, but it's going to be their decision on that. And in terms of flexibility, I think what we've believed from the beginning, and there have been a lot of different questions about it, but we put these dates together, we put these championship event calendars together in July of 2020. And in a very uncertain time and an unstable time, I think one of the things I'm most proud of is we've stayed the course. We kept these dates in place so people knew exactly what we would be facing going forward. And unfortunately, if we missed something, it would be on the front end, but we would keep these back end dates okay. I don't see how we can go any deeper into June or even later into June and almost early July to keep this available. I think we're ready to go. I think we can keep to this calendar right now in the sports that we listed today under season 2 team sports. And I'm really hopeful and trying to remain positive about the individual sports. And we can meet these calendars, we can meet these deadlines. And I think that's going to be in the best interest of our schools and our communities, because they're going to be out of school. They're going to be ready for what the next step in the journey is, whether it's a senior who's graduating or if it's an underclass, a young man or young woman preparing for their next season. And I think for us to go any deeper into the time frame that we've already taken would be not in their best interest. So that's how we see it. We're going to stick with these dates, and we think that we're going to make these dates happen. So we don't need to be looking to go any further than what we've already planned.
Yeah, a track coach asked me why the sit-out period is remaining April 24th when they're still uncertain whether there even will be a track championships, and they have to get obviously these league finals done. So why are you holding the track people to April 24th?
Well, it's the same date that it's been there from the beginning, and the point being, and everyone should know that this is a statewide bylaw, so it isn't just in the southern section where there is a sit-out period. There's a sit-out period in all 10 sections within the state of California. So that isn't something that I can change as the Southern Section Commissioner. And until anything such as that came as a statewide directive, then obviously we have to stay with the SOP dates that are in place as they relate to the student athletes in the various sports. Many of the SOP dates have passed. A few more are going to be passing this week. And the very last ones we have are baseball, softball, track and field, which will be the week after. So it's not going to be a tremendous amount of time between now and the end of those SOP dates. It's less than 2 weeks now for the track one, which I think is the last one we have. So I think we'll probably stay with that.
All right, and just finally, the home sites. In basketball, there's always fights. We need to get more people in there to see the game, so the small schools don't like losing their home sites. But because of the attendance situation, is this a case this year where like a Sierra Canyon could host at their small site?
Well, again, we're going to have to follow what the Department of Public Health and local county health authorities are saying at that time. Like I said, today's April 12th. There are capacity limits in place right now, and those capacity limits may be lifted. I'm not saying they're going to be lifted entirely, but they could be lifted and more capacity could be allowed. If that's the case, then we certainly need to look at those numbers and say, where's the site that could accommodate the maximum number of people that would be allowed to go into a particular site? And I think that'll be important for us to look at as we go forward. And those will be more case-by-case basis. It'll have to do with matchups. It'll have to do with availability of venues. It'll have to do with the places that can hold a game and make sure that the anticipated crowd can come in. But we're going to be doing a lot of things ticketless. We're going to be doing a lot of this in advance with people buying their tickets online and being able to know exactly what the capacity is going to be prior to a game taking place. And so, again, it's just part of this adaptation and change that we need to be on top of and implement so that we can do this. If we're not willing to do that and let the fact that there may not be as many people go to a game as we would like to have, then we're shortchanging our student athletes. We're shortchanging our programs. We want them to play. They want to play. They want to play for championships. We want to be there to support them. And if that means that we have some issues with capacity, I said this months and months ago, that's not going to determine whether we play or not. We're going to play. And we owe that to our student athletes, to our programs. And we told them that we would do that. And when given the chance, we would make every effort to see that become reality. And that's what we're saying today, and hoping to keep saying all the way through into May and June.
But is there any indication the state is going to get rid of its requirement that only parents are be allowed to attend the event?
Ongoing conversations, as you know, continually changing environment, changing decisions on different aspects of all of this. I mean, there was a lot of talk about the travel limitation and whether we could ever see the change in the travel limitation. And last Tuesday night around 6 o'clock, that happened. So, you know, we just have to keep doing what we've been doing, which is to keep advocating for what we want to see happen for our student athletes and our programs. And one thing I've really tried not to do, and I'm not doing today, is be in the prediction business. But I am trying my best to adapt and have our staff adapt to what we see and our schools adapt to what we see. And then faced with the most recent information, we go forward with plans based on that recent information. And if it changes, then we have to adapt and change as well. So I'm hopeful that the capacity limits will be raised. I'm hopefully that we'll see things much more than we're used to. But, you know, that remains to be seen. And I have no way of knowing for sure if that's going to happen or not. I do know if the numbers keep getting better, we see the improvements, we see the vaccines, we see what's going on. All of that is only positive. It's only good for what we have in front of us.
Okay, you said you're not in the prediction business, so I still want you to predict the Bosco Mater Dei game on Saturday.
Oh boy, I think it's gonna be a great game. It's gonna be highly competitive. It's gonna be really well played, and it's gonna be really close. That's my prediction.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan Albano.
Hey, Rob, I was wondering, what could the streaming capabilities look like for, broadcasting some of the playoffs, with so much going on in the spring and some of the maybe limitations going on, fan wise. And then I also wondered, you mentioned you had your eye on the prize. What is your biggest hope and your biggest concern for the Southern section, these playoffs coming up in the spring?
Well, I'll talk about your first part with the streaming, and obviously I want to credit Assistant Commissioner Tom Simmons for his work. I mean, he has just been tirelessly working with our schools, with different streaming entities. We are doing anything and everything so that games can be streamed, and people who are not able to see a particular game are getting that chance. And if you ever see every week the list of games that are being streamed, the list is incredible. Our schools are doing it through platforms that they're in charge of. Our partners are doing it. There's a great effort going on, and certainly as we go forward, we will see more of that, and certainly those home site games and games that may not be able to accommodate as large a crowd as we would like, that those will be on streaming platforms and available for people to watch. I feel like in terms of concerns, I mean, we're going to have concerns about a lot of things, but I think every day that we move forward, in my view, is another day that we're putting a lot of this behind us. And we all know what we've gone through over the last year or so. And each time that we are able to look at something that's going to be positive going forward, then I just see a little bit more space between what we've gone through getting behind us. And so that's really what I'm looking for as we go forward. I said back in July when we announced this calendar, I said, we don't need any more negativity for our student athletes. Our student athletes have had enough of that. They were shut down. They weren't allowed to go back to school. They weren't allowed to go and practice and play games. And the one thing that we didn't need were people to be negative about what was in front of us. And I want to commend our student athletes first for hanging in there with it, staying with it. Our coaches were fantastic in motivating our student athletes, staying connected, staying engaged. Our athletic directors, the incredible amount of work they've had to do, the juggling of schedules and all the things that have gone on with trying to make the facilities work and the coaches work and multi-school, multi-student participation. Our principals, the leadership they've provided, they're not just thinking about athletics. They're thinking about their entire programs, their academic programs, everything happening on a campus. And all of these people have gotten together to really see this happen. And there were people that wanted to jump ship. There were people that wanted to say this would never happen. There were people who went to the different platforms to express their frustrations and blame people and do what they did. And all I have to say to that is, how did that help? How did that help our student athletes? How did that help them stay motivated, stay inspired, stay ready to go for when hopefully this time would come and they would get their opportunities? So their opportunities are here. We're going to do everything we do in the business we're in to help provide those opportunities. We're going to do what my good friend Steve Fryer always says. We're going to help people fill their scrapbooks. We're going to help people make their memories. And all the people that have stayed positive with this message and have stood through all these months and months of uncertainty and waited for this opportunity are finally going to get that chance. And I appreciate that more than you can ever know. And so as we go forward, as I mentioned, some of this is behind us. Hopefully more and more that we do going forward puts more of it behind us. And then we can look back and say, look what we got through. Look what we were able to endure. And look what was here on the other side. We're going to hand plaques out again. We're going to see those smiles. We're going to see those dog piles. We're going to see everyone jumping up and down and celebrating. All the things that we've missed. And so we're looking forward to that. We're excited for that. And for all of you that did all the work that you have done over this well over a year, I want to say thank you again, because what you've done and what you're prepared to do here in the next couple months, this will be lifetime memories. It's the business we're in, is to create those lifetime memories. And we're looking forward to seeing those happen in the next couple of months.
Thank you, Rob. I mean, obviously you can tell how enthusiastic and excited you are in your voice, and everything that you express. I mean, it is, as far as on the concerns, it's, there might be, a playoff game perhaps canceled with a COVID test, and just like the season one sports have had to, adjust to that schedule, and that's potentially something that would be new, you could encounter in season two.
You are correct. And we said from the beginning, all we wanted was a chance. All we wanted was an opportunity. And I'm not saying we talking about Southern section. I'm talking about our student athletes. That's all we wanted. And we have it. Are there going to be bumps? Yes. Are we maybe going to have some issues where we have games compromised due to what we're dealing with, which is a global pandemic? Yes. But I guess I will quote Bruno Mars. Don't believe me, just watch.
Okay, our last question was supposed to be Fred. Fred, are you on? Doesn't look like you're still on. James, you've got a question or no? Just Fred is off. Okay, so I guess that's it. Commissioner Wygod, would you like to sum up the day?
Well, again, just want to thank everybody for being part of this today and for your questions. Appreciate the ability to communicate with you and everybody out there about what's going on. And just look forward to what there is in front of us here, as I mentioned, and look forward to reading more about what you see when you're out covering these games. And just want to wish our student athletes and our coaches and our athletic directors and our principals and all the people involved in this the very best of luck as we go forward. Hang in there with us. We're going to do what we can, and we're going to try our best to keep communicating with you and give you the information as it's happening so you can be ready, you can prepare, and we can go out and finish up the 2020-2021 school year in a way that we really want to finish it up. And that's putting what's behind us, and focusing on what's in front of us. So thanks again. All the best to all of you. Stay well, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you again soon.